This happened when I was about 6 or 7 years old, back in 1970 or 71. My dad and I had gone to my grandmother's house to do some yard work and had been there all day. We were heading home and it was like 10 p.m. on a Saturday night. We were about a mile or two from home and my dad pulled into the gas station we always went to. The man that owned the station was called Jimmy. He was usually the attendant there on the weekends. Jimmy and my dad were good friends and they would always talk about things, and he would tell me to go grab a Coke out of the cooler. He was a super nice guy and everybody in town knew Jimmy. Jimmy was an older man. Thinking back on it, anybody over 30 is old to a 6 or 7-year-old kid, but I would think he was probably in his mid to late 60s. This place is not like the gas stations like we have today. They sold gas, cans of oil, and had a drink box with sodas, and that was about it. They also closed at like 11 p.m. or 12 midnight on the weekends depending on the customers. We pulled up in our old truck and could see that light was on inside the small office building. There were some old wooden chairs right outside the office where Jimmy usually sat to greet people as they pulled up. Jimmy usually would get up and walk over and start talking to us as we filled up our vehicle. Tonight there was no Jimmy. They had a small bathroom attached to one side of the office, so we figured Jimmy was in there. When you pulled into the station there was a black hose on the ground that would make a bell chime twice to let Jimmy know he had a customer. My dad didn't think much about it and began filling the truck. Still no Jimmy. My dad finished filling up and was starting to get a little concerned. This wasn't like Jimmy. He told me to stay in the truck. I had fallen asleep on the ride from my grandmother's house and was still a little groggy. My dad went over to the bathroom door and knocked on it and called out Jimmy's name. No reply. He tried the door handle and it was locked. He went to the other side of the building where Jimmy normally parked his truck. No truck could be seen. He then went inside the office. He stepped in and just froze. He stood still, but I could see the back of his head. From his head movement I could tell he was looking over to the right. Then he quickly looked to the left, down at the floor and then down at his feet, and seemed to jump back like he had been shocked. He came rushing back to the truck, not running but moving quickly nonetheless. The old fluorescent lights that hung over the pumps give you a kind of pale look normally, but I could tell he was white as a ghost, and it wasn't because of the lights. He jumped in the truck and cranked it right up. I was scared and was asking him what was going on. He said, "We need to get home. Just hang on, we have to go." This was a time before cell phones and there was a pay phone on the corner of the filling station, but we didn't stop there. We got home and my dad called the police. He told me to get in the house and he got back in the truck, told something to my mom and then went spinning out of our driveway heading back to the gas station. My mom made me go to bed and she waited up for my dad's return. I couldn't sleep, so I laid in bed and waited for his return as well. It was about 4 hours until my dad got home. I creeped to my bedroom door and listened to him tell my mom what happened. The gas station had been robbed. There was blood drops on the floor of the office and on the cash register. There was a lot more blood in the grass and gravel where Jimmy's truck was usually parked. He said it looked like the struggle began on the side of the building where his truck was usually parked. The police had found a bloody pipe in the grass behind the building. The pipe at one end was threaded and there were blood and hair fibers stuck in the threads. The police speculated that Jimmy was attacked and beaten behind the building and was led into the office to open the register, and a filling cabinet had blood on it, and Jimmy may have kept a cash lock box in the bottom of the cabinet. The police kicked down the bathroom door, and Jimmy laid in the floor in a puddle of blood. Shot once in the head. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I finally came out of my room crying and told them I had heard it all. We don't know how close we were to showing up in the middle of a robbery and murder. I would wake up from nightmares a lot of nights for the next few weeks. Sometimes I still do. When I was younger, every year for Christmas, I would drive upstate to my aunt's house along a stretch of highway. I cannot for the life of me remember the name of this road. All I know is it runs nearby Akron, New York at some point. However, most of the drive is through rural areas with little to no towns nearby. So it was the dead of night, and my groggy self had gotten off a long shift, and had to drag myself to my aunt's house since my extended family was expecting me the following morning. Near halfway through the drive, I realized I was low on gas, which irritated me. My brother told me he had filled it up the day before, so he either forgot or was straight lying. I saw an archaic-looking sign for a gas station off the next road. It wasn't an official road sign, literally a pole with a slab of metal attached with "gas off next exit," or something along those lines painted on. That seemed a little sketchy, but people do the same thing with fruit stands on highways, so whatever. I pulled off the next exit on some dilapidated country road through dense woods. The whole thing was creepy and surreal. I kept expecting Leatherface to come running out of the trees with a chainsaw. Anyways, eventually I came to the gas station and realized quickly it hadn't been open for years. It was all rusted and the convenience store's roof was caving in. The gas pumps had all been taken out as well. I pulled over next to it and checked my gauge. I would probably only make it another half-mile before running out, so I called AAA and they said they'd send a truck over. Now I played the waiting game. I left my engine on because when the headlights were off, everything was pitch black and my paranoid self wasn't sitting next to an abandoned gas station in the middle of a forest in complete darkness. So most of the wait went uneventful until I sensed movement around the side of the old store, where my lights are pointed. I look up, but didn't see anything more, so I look back down at my phone. Then over the sounds of the night, I hear someone yell, "Hey buddy, come here," in a demanding tone. I look up, and I kid you not, there's a dude standing by the old store, looking towards me, illuminated by my headlights. He looked like a run-of-the-mill homeless guy. I was honestly spooked, and figured he must have been squatting there. Still watching him, I rolled down my window and yelled something like, "Yeah, what's up?" Still mentally crapping myself. I had my foot ready to floor it out of there at the first sign of trouble. "You got any change?" he asked me. And I replied with, "No, I don't, sorry man." I look up at him. He has this kind of vacant expression and is standing stiff. Then I see more movement. There are heads. About 20 or so heads, peeking around trees beyond the man I'm talking to. I can't see them clearly at all, but they are definitely people. Literally just heads, staring in my directions from around the trees. That's when I see 4 guys beginning to walk in a hurry from around the gas station to my car. I got so scared I wanted to throw up. But I wasn't taking any risks, so I just sped off. As I look in the rear-view mirror, I can see probably 2 or 3 more people emerge from around the gas station. I got as far away from that place as my tank could carry me, and updated AAA on my location. The driver came back over and filled me up, and I didn't say anything. But after he left I wanted to call the cops, so I called the nearest sheriff department. They said they'd send a trooper over and I gave them the location. When I got to my aunt's house, they called me back and said whoever was there was gone, but they could tell a large number of people had been living there for a while. Blankets, canned food, the usual. The whole situation still freaks me out, but frankly I can consider myself lucky I'll always have such a creepy story to tell. I'm just glad nothing bad happened. A little over a year ago, I had a job working overnight at a gas station close to my house. I'm a woman and was 31 at the time. I know, to some it seems unsafe for a woman to work the graveyard shift by herself. However, it was a slow store and the sheriff's office was about 20 feet across from it. I really didn't think I would have that many problems. There would be about 30 customers in an 8-hour shift, and that was on a busier night. It was about 3:30 in the morning. I went outside to sweep the parking lot and last minute check the trash. It was time for a cigarette, and I had one headphone in, kind of jamming out to the music. Across the road in the parking lot of the sheriff's office, I saw a figure with his back to me. He was swaying back and forth while looking down. Honestly, it looked like he was enjoying a much-needed piss. Against the sheriff's office, though, maybe not the best idea. The building closed at 4 p.m. and didn't open again till 6 the next morning, but why? By the back of his ripped white t-shirt I remembered that he had come in about 4 hours earlier. He was a total creep and I could already tell he was up to no good. I didn't say anything. I just took my eyes off of him and tried not to draw attention to myself. It was working until a car pulled in. I was still outside as they pulled up. I saw him look at the car and then at me and back and forth again. As the customer was leaving, I walked her outside. I still had half of my cigarette to smoke and had left my dustpan outside with the squeegee. We both heard him start to swear angrily and seemingly engage in an argument with himself. She looked across the road and told me to be careful. I made an awkward joke about him being the one who should be more afraid of me or something like that. The man was still there but closer to the road, now facing the parking lot of my store. Whatever he's yelling was completely unintelligible. He was obviously very drunk and can barely stand straight, still swaying away. I didn't engage him, but I didn't take my eyes off of him this time. I just slowly walked back into the store. Something about his face really bothered me. It had a darkness to it, but his eyes looked wild. My experience during graveyard jobs has been that the crazy-eyed ones are the worst ones. I didn't like it at all and wanted no part of it. I still had almost 3 hours to go and 2 before any other employees got there. Instantly I went to the computer and typed up a temporarily closed sign just in case he wanted trouble. I was coming around the counter, on my way to the doors, when I saw that he'd walked across the road to my side now. I literally just barely got the second door locked when he stumbled into our very small parking lot. My hand mimed the hand signal for cut across my neck, basically saying, "Nope, sorry you can't come in here, we're closed." I shook my head back and forth too, hoping to further discourage him. He started walking away but screamed something at me while he's walking. I don't mean he was grumpy and shouted at me or yelled slurs or anything. I mean like he was at an enraged volume and was violently throwing his hands everywhere. Definitely knowing I'm in the wrong shift on the wrong job, I got really uncomfortable. So I decided to call the cops. It's a good thing too, because the minute I hung up with them, there he comes again, up to the door. He starts pulling and banging on it. He backs up and runs into it, trying to ram it. Not that it would have done any good. I made the mistake of telling him that I had called the cops, which made him run away. I say I made the mistake of telling him because once I said that, he took off. The police never found him. They drove around the road and the surrounding neighborhoods for over an hour but found no one. He was on foot, so I don't get where he could have gone to. He didn't harm me, and with them not finding him, I didn't fill out a police report or anything. I was safe behind thick glass doors that were locked for the rest of my shift. It just sucked. Maybe if I didn't warn him ahead of time, I wouldn't have had to spend the last 3 months of my job constantly looking over my shoulder. I'll never know what the right choice was. I'm just glad I don't work there anymore.